Welcome to Prospects to Pros, where we talk about college football players who are about to be NFL players who are just college football players, and everything in between. I'm Andy Staples, here with the Athletics draft guru, Dane Brugler. And Dane, I am excited because I am in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I am going to a game this weekend that has massive current college football implications and probably will have a lot of eyes on it from the draft community, and I'm sure tons of scouts credentialed for it, because you've got Hendon Hooker for Tennessee, Will Levis for Kentucky, and a bunch of other players on that field who a lot of people are going to want to take a look at.
College football just seems more fun when Tennessee is good like this. It adds another. The SEC has always got good teams, obviously, but when Tennessee is good, it's been so long. But when Tennessee is good, it adds something a little bit extra. And you're right, with this game coming up against Kentucky, this is going to be all eyes on these two quarterbacks. With Hendon Hooker, what does he do against a pretty good defense? He's check mark against Alabama. What he did against LSU. Okay, well, let's keep it rolling. See what you do against Kentucky. And then Will Levis, he had that tough game against Ole Miss, had a couple of those turnovers that ultimately led to the loss. Then he was hurt, came back, in the last game and clearly didn't look 100%, but he still was good to see him out there. Now it sounds like he's more towards 100%, and this is a tough place to play in Knoxville, going up against a Tennessee defense that's vulnerable, but still, it's something where scouts are going to be expecting him to put on a show, both these guys, and so it'll be fun to watch.
Well, and this is a defense that gave up 400 yards passing to Anthony Richardson earlier in the year, and Richardson has not looked that confident against anybody else, really. Now, some of that was with the game kind of mostly decided, so I don't know exactly how much you're going to lay at the feet of the Tennessee defense, but you did see Bryce Young slice and dice them pretty good. It just so happens that Tennessee scored 52 on Alabama. So they were running past Alabama defenders in a way that you're not used to seeing.
This is a difficult, unfair question, but since you're there, boots on the ground, do you get the sense that this is a team that is focused on going 1-0 this week, or do you think there's maybe there's a little more attention? Are they reading some of the reading their own news clippings? I mean, what kind of sense do you get from this Tennessee team, especially from I know you've talked with Jalin Hyatt, you've talked with a couple of these guys that are considered top prospects.
I think they were very fortunate the way the schedule fell this year, because normally it would go Alabama, open date, SEC opponent. The way their schedule used to work was they'd play Alabama, there'd be an open date, and they'd play South Carolina. Everything got shuffled up a little bit a few years ago. And so the way this one worked is they played Alabama, they beat Alabama, everybody was crazy. The next week, they immediately play Tennessee Martin. Not a game that they would have any threat to lose, but a game that I think kind of helped refocus them. And if they'd had an open date between Alabama and Kentucky, I would be putting all of my money on Kentucky to cover in this game, because it would be a classic letdown spot. But the fact that they had to recenter and refocus and play a game, I think that's going to help them. Talking to Jalin Hyatt, he said that Tuesday night after the Alabama game, 8:30, he's back in the complex catching balls from the jugs machine. Like, they're a morning practice team. He'd already practiced and lifted. And so this was just him saying, let's go. I want to try to do this again. And this guy had just scored 5 touchdowns by himself against Alabama. So I think they are pretty focused, but Kentucky presents some challenges that you watch Kentucky shut down Mississippi State's defense the last time we saw them play. Kentucky had an open date to get healthy. They are mostly healthy. Will Levis feels like he's as healthy as he's been since that injury, obviously. Jacquez Jones, their inside linebacker, he's out, but that's pretty much it. Everybody else is healthy and back. And you saw against Mississippi State, Chris Rodriguez Jr. was really running well and kind of sucked some possessions out of that game. Felt like Mississippi State can never get in rhythm. That's where I would worry if I were Tennessee, because they're a rhythm-based offense. When they're able to get on the field regularly, their timing works. Hooker and his receivers are in sync. If you can keep them off the field for I'm talking about actual time minutes. This is something that
Right.
Alabama really couldn't do. You can maybe get them out of sync. You maybe get a 3 and out, and then maybe you can sandwich some scoring drives around that. That's how you take control of a game against a team like this. But the problem with this particular Tennessee team is they just, I mean, they come roaring back, and they have so many weapons. And we'll see. I don't know if Cedric Tillman's going to play in this game. He had the tightrope procedure on his ankle that he hurt earlier in the season. But it's either probably going to be this week that he comes back or next week against Georgia.
Okay. And that's a good kind of look ahead with Georgia coming up. That's something that they have to get by Kentucky first, but it's hard not to look past that and see the Bulldogs coming up. And that's going to be a tough 2 weeks, but we're going to learn a lot more about this Tennessee team, a lot more about these prospects. And that's a good point about kind of the ball control. And I mean, Will Levis in that Kentucky offense, they run more of a pro style scheme than most other offenses in college. You will see Will Levis under center more than most quarterbacks in college football. That's how they'll run the ball. It's a lot of motion.
Right,
right, exactly. I mean, from that, they tweak things a little bit with the new offensive coordinator coming in, but for the most part, it's still that McVay tree, which is essentially the Shanahan tree. So,
Rich Scangarello came from the 49ers. So, I mean, your current OC was with Kyle Shanahan last year. I mean, so you're getting a lot of those same concepts. And, if their offensive line has a good game, they will be able to control the possession. Tennessee's offensive line is another one I'm interested in looking at. As we record this, I'm going to be talking to some of those guys later today. They've had a really good year. They've done a really good job protecting Hendon Hooker. You didn't hear Will Anderson's name a lot in the Alabama game. And like Will Anderson, the week before against Texas A&M, I think he might've had 1 sack or maybe didn't have any sacks, but he was in the backfield nearly every play he was on the field.
Yeah. Double-digit pressures.
Yeah. That wasn't the case against Tennessee. Darnell Wright, the right tackle for Tennessee, had a phenomenal game against Will Anderson. Yeah. So that's a guy that I'm really interested in seeing up close in person.
Yeah, and he a former top recruit who never really lived up to it, but he's playing well as a senior. And he's not the most twitchy when it comes to his hips and some of his redirect and things like that. But he's big. He's got some length to him, and he just does a nice job staying in front of pass rushers. I mean, he just makes it tough to get around them. And sometimes that's all you need to do. It's a result-oriented position. You don't have to necessarily check every box. If you can block your guy, you're doing your job. And so, that type of thing does not go unnoticed by scouts. Back to Jalin Hyatt real quick. I'm interested, watching him, you get maybe a Will Fuller vibe from him because of that speed. And as an underneath threat, he's very unproven. But if you can get that one-on-one coverage and he can just use that speed where it's either verticals or one-cut routes, I mean, he is a tough guy to cover. It seems like he's really burst onto this. I mean, it not seems like he has burst on this scene this year because he wasn't really a guy we were talking about all that much. Talking to him, I mean, did you get a sense of, is this something he saw coming? Is this something where, this was maybe what they were projecting for the offense coming into the year?
He felt this coming in fall camp. That's when he really felt confident. And he said it took him a while because he got a concussion against Pittsburgh in game 2 last year that kind of messed up his whole season. Now he wound up playing again as the season went on, but his confidence was shaken. It was the time where he was out. It was very hard for him to kind of reconcile. The world is moving on without me. They're going to play games whether I'm here or not. I heard his dad interviewed and, talking about explaining that to him and saying, look, it's okay. You're going to be okay, but you've got to understand, you've got to work your way back. And part of the thing with Jalin, I think, is he's been a more wiry guy his whole life, and keeping weight on has been hard to do. He plays right now between 180 and 185. And he said, when he gets on the scale and it's 184, he's really happy. And, but he has to eat 5 meals a day to keep that weight on. And boy, what he gets to eat sounds amazing. He's like, dinner number 1 will be like country fried steak and mashed potatoes. And he'll come back and eat a second dinner of that on a normal day. But he has to, because that's just been the whole thing. Like, he's from Columbia, South Carolina. South Carolina and Clemson, neither one of them recruited him because they felt like, you're too slight. We don't know if you can put weight on or keep weight on. He has kept weight on. And he said the biggest difference he feels is he feels stronger, and he feels like he can play press coverage, like he can get off press coverage, because the biggest problem he had was, if a bigger guy got his hands on him, he's done. None of that speed matters at that point. So now you're seeing him able to, when he's got a safety matched up on him, and this offense will try to find mismatches. So they're trying to get him on a safety who's kind of a run filler, thumper, downhill guy. But what that guy will try to do, because it's the only thing he can do against him, is get him right at the line of scrimmage. And Jalen's gotten better at getting away from that.
Yeah, well, Will Fuller at the combine was 6 foot, even 186 pounds, ran a 4.32. That sounds pretty similar to what we're going to see from Jalin Hyatt, both size and speed. So that comp might have some merit.
4.32 is just mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's moving.
That is so fast.
Yeah.
But also, Hyatt has he said that being able to keep the weight on also helps him break tackles, which is something that he hadn't really been able to do before. And so now he's doing that. So again, I keep pointing out, no Cedric Tillman. That adds a huge physical presence to this receiving core that wasn't there. Cedric is a bigger guy who also can move. And so that would just create more mismatches once they get him back. I wonder, do you want to try to work him in if you can against Kentucky, or bring him out against Georgia? And it's like, hey, try to cover this best group of DBs Tennessee's going to see.
Yeah. Well, and that tightrope surgery is something that, it knocks you out for, 6 weeks, usually around there. Tucker Kraft, the really talented tight end, he was my tight end 3 coming into the year. I was like 35 overall. He got hurt the first drive of the season against Iowa. I think South Dakota State beats Iowa in that opener if Tucker Kraft stays on the field. He got back onto the field against North Dakota on Saturday and had a beautiful 32-yard touchdown. He looked good. He was moving at full speed. So good to see him bounce back from that tightrope surgery. Hopefully we can see Tillman here pretty soon as well.
Yeah, I think the most famous one was Tua Tagovailoa getting it in 2000.
I don't think I heard of it before Tua. I mean,
that was the first I had ever heard of it.
Right. Yeah, it wasn't part of the normal lexicon when it came to football injuries. Yeah,
I have a neighbor who's an orthopedic surgeon, and I'm like, okay, explain it to me like I'm a kindergartner, please.
Right.
and he did. So,
right.
But it is amazing, because it does help those guys, because those high ankle sprains, a lot of times there's risk of re-injury. You're scared to bring them back full speed. This apparently stabilizes things a little bit so that you can feel a little more comfortable bringing them back in a little more timely fashion. But let's talk a little bit more about some of these games last weekend, Dane. The one I think a lot of people were watching from a draft standpoint was Clemson-Syracuse. Clemson's D-line, it's a nasty group. That's, I think they're going to wind up undefeated. I don't know that they necessarily are going to deserve to be in the college football playoff. They will be if they're undefeated. I don't like their chances, but what gives them a puncher's chance is having a grown man D-line.
Yes, 100%. And I mentioned earlier, 5 maybe could be drafted. There's 6 defensive linemen that could realistically be drafted in April, just from that defensive line alone. It's crazy. On the edges, Myles Murphy, the junior, if he comes out, he has a chance to be a top 10 pick. He is, same reasons Travon Walker went number 1. Same reasons we're talking about Myles Murphy being a potential top 10 pick. Not only does he lead the team in sacks and tackles for loss, but he's 6'5", 275 pounds. Number 3 on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. They clocked him at 4.5 in the 40-yard dash. I think a 35-inch vert. He's long, and it was a good battle in that game against Syracuse. Myles Murphy against left tackle Matthew Bergeron. Bergeron's a great story. Kid from Canada, had 0 offers until he went to a Syracuse camp. They snuck him in, kind of a quiet ascension, but he's been a really nice story for Syracuse and really their best player. I mean, Sean Tucker gets all the love, and the Garrett Williams at corner is a good player. Matthew Bergeron might be their best player, and he went from maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick over the summer. Now, I mean, it's going to be hard seeing him get out of the top 60, top 75 picks because of how good he's been playing. That Myles Murphy-Bergeron matchup was really fun to watch. Brian Brzee, the defensive tackle, I mean, he's lived up to all the hype he came in with. He's going to be a potential top 15, top 20 pick. After him, then we're probably looking at the next guy. Maybe it's either Tyler Davis, the senior defensive tackle, who he doesn't have the length that you want. That's going to be, and we'll talk about outliers here in a little bit, but he's one of my outliers this year because he has shorter arms. And there's the list of defensive tackles that have been drafted in the first 100 picks or the top 4 rounds with under 31.5-inch arms. It's a short one. I mean, it's just there's not many guys that have done it. And so, but Tyler Davis is a really disruptive player. You throw on the Wake Forest tape and they couldn't block him.
Let me tell you about this a small town near where I grew up in Florida it's called Apopka, Florida. It's known for, orange groves basically. And so Tyler Davis and Jalin Carter were playing high school football. Now they did not play at the same school. Tyler played at Wekiva High School and Jalin Carter played for Apopka High School, but they're basically the same. I think they're a year apart. And can you imagine that level of talent? And oh, by the way, there's probably no chance that either of you will be the best defensive tackle from your town because Warren Sapp is from Apopka.
Jeez. Yeah, that's they're doing something right in that town. I'll tell you that.
That's Trey Henderson too.
Oh, wow. That's Davis is a good player. He's going to get beat up through the process, like I said, because he's 6'2", 290, and he's got probably around 31.5-inch arms. And like I said, going back the last 4 or 5 years, Ed Oliver, I think, is really one of the only defensive tackles with shorter than 32-inch arms drafted in the first 3 or 4 rounds. So, and
Ed Oliver has the best get off of any human being you'll ever meet.
Right, exactly. He's in that unique territory with, not quite on Aaron Donald's level, but just in terms of being not exactly what you look for, but it's just too disruptive to care about, with size of the package, what it looks like. So those 3 guys. And then we have KJ Henry, who has been a revelation this year. He is top 10 in the nation in pressures. He can win with speed. He's got a nasty spin move. He's really aggressive with his hands. I don't know that he's going to be a top 2-round guy, but somewhere rounds 3, 4, 5, KJ Henry is going to be a nice pickup and a nice addition. So he's had a really nice senior year and taken himself from a borderline draft pick to a certain mid-round type of guy that can come in and help your defensive line. So that's 4. Ruka Rororo, the defensive tackle, he's also, if he comes out, he's a junior, he could go back, but if he comes out, he's getting drafted. That's 5. And then the 6th guy, Xavier Thomas, who a former 5-star, he surprised a lot of people when he decided to come back this year, got hurt in August, broke his foot, and he's just working his way back onto the field now, but he's another guy that had draftable grades going into the year. So that's 6 defensive linemen right there that are on the radar, will be draft picks if all 6 of them declare.
That is it. It is really when Clemson has been at its best is when it has had that level of defensive line. You think back to the group in 2018. You had Cleveland Farrell, Christian Wilkins, Austin Bryant, Dexter Lawrence. The 3 of those guys were first rounders. Austin Bryant actually might have been the most productive of the group as a senior. And I think he went in the 3rd or 4th round. So, and then they had other guys who were kind of role players behind them, like Niles Pinckney and who wound up being pretty good players. So that is what gives them a shot. Offensively, they don't, it doesn't feel like they have a lot that you as a draft guy would get super excited about. I would imagine Will Shipley next year when he's
for sure
capable of coming out, but not anybody really draftable this year that blows you away.
No, I mean, I like Jordan McFadden on the offensive line. He's got a guard's body. He's 6'2", 305. I think he's played really well this year. I think he's got a good chance to be a draft pick. But no, your point, I think you're spot on. And with the situation at quarterback's really interesting. I mean, they've said DJ's the guy, but I mean, you can't bench him again and still say he's the guy. So it's he's. The margin for error is much smaller now, and they've got a game coming up this weekend against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's not maybe not what we thought it could be coming into the year. Their offense is basically find 87 and just throw to them, see what happens.
And the defenses know that, unfortunately for Mr. Mayer.
Hey, and honestly, it's better than them underutilizing him. So at least they know who their best player is, and they're kind of throwing it to him, see what happens. But that Notre Dame, we'll see. What the spread looks like on that, and if Notre Dame can give them a game. But that Clemson offense is really inconsistent. I mean, Syracuse, they should have won that game. I mean, they had every opportunity to.
And they were dropping like fly. Well, their best corner's out.
Right.
They're on like their third nose tackle, and he keeps getting hurt. And so, the fact that Clemson won that game is, I'm not entirely sure that Clemson will wind up undefeated. I think they will be, but after watching South Carolina beat Texas A&M, I started to go, on the right day, maybe there's a chance.
Right. And the ACC just doesn't. I don't know that they're going to see someone on that schedule that's really going to. I mean, Louisville's coming up, Miami's coming up. That's not. I mean, probably South Carolina. You never know.
Yeah, probably North Carolina in the championship game and see Drake May. But the problem is North Carolina's defense is so bad that Clemson, despite its offensive struggles, will score like 45 points on them. So.
Yeah, and I mean, North Carolina's offense, I mean, their defense is pretty bad, but their offense is
amazing.
Drake May, this sounds hyperbolic, and maybe I've said it before. I don't remember, but he looks like just what Justin Herbert looked like at Oregon. I mean, he's big. He's an athlete. He's got a big time arm. Smart kid. I mean, there's a lot of parallels to Justin Herbert, and he's still young. He's only a true sophomore, I think. So he's still very young. Yeah, I mean, so I know he's not eligible for this draft because we'd be talking about him a lot more.
Oh, the tank,
but
the tank
next year,
the tank for Drake talk is going to be big time next year because I think he's going to be the guy everybody's talking about.
Well, I mean, and look, next year's quarterback class is always better, right? That's what everyone says. So, but I mean, honestly, you look at next year's class, you've got Drake May, Caleb Williams is legit. I mean, he's so much fun to watch. Quinn Ewers, he's going to get better and better and better. We'll see what that looks like. He still has hardly played college football, and he's got a lot to work with. And JJ McCarthy at Michigan, we'll see how he develops. But there's a lot of talent there. So as we look forward, I mean, it wouldn't be. I know, again, people always say next year's quarterback class is better. I would not be surprised at all if the 2024 quarterback class ends up being much better than the 2023 quarterback class.
It feels more, what it feels like to me is more high ceiling, high bust potential.
Yeah, that's fair.
The people in this class feel like, I don't know that there's a potential megastar, but more people who might wind up being capable NFL starters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that makes it interesting. I mean, we'll talk about it in a little bit with the draft order and all that shaping up, but some teams will have some decisions to make if they want to, with Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, it would be hard to pass on one of those guys hoping for, it just depends on where they are in their roster rebuild and all that. So it'll be a fascinating conversations with some of these quarterback needy teams.
Let's talk about another guy on the D line who had maybe his best game of the season. We've talked about him earlier. We talked about Zach Harrison after Ohio State played Rutgers, but he played probably his best game against Iowa, and now he's about to go up against Penn State. What have you seen from him?
Yeah, Iowa. I mean, for all the criticism that Iowa gets with Spencer Petras at quarterback, it's not just Spencer Petras. The offensive line cannot block anybody. Their only weapon is Sam Laporta. And I mean, it's just the entire offense has something's got to change there because they've got nothing going for them. But Zach Harrison, I mean, he gave the left tackle and the right tackle a really long day. But the interesting thing with Zach Harrison is, he last year, and we've been talking about Harrison for a while now. He's a former 5-star, top recruit in Ohio. Ohio State was able to keep him home. So he's a guy that's 6'6", 266 pounds, 36-inch arms, and he's going to run in the 4.5s. Maybe even runs in the 4.4s. I mean, this guy is ridiculous. He was running track, sprinting as a senior in high school at 240 some pounds. So this guy is big. He's fast. And right there alone, that length and that speed is enough to give blockers trouble. Iowa couldn't do anything with it. And does he still need to develop in terms of a pass rush sequence, in terms of setting up his moves, introducing some more things to do to get blockers off balance? Yeah, he does. He's still a work in progress in that respect. But when you're that big and that fast, you're going to be drafted high. And the interesting thing with Zach Harrison this year, he's actually playing less than half the number of snaps that he did last year. Last year, he averaged 47 defensive snaps per game. This year, he's only averaging 22 snaps per game. So he's still a starter, but it's a decreased role. And I don't know if, fatigue, if that plays a part of it. And so just seeing fewer snaps, more of a rotation and Jim Knowles' defense, if that's helping him. But he's seeing fewer snaps, but his impact has been greater. So it's a really interesting dynamic with Zach Harrison at Ohio State. I mean, bottom line, his combine performance is going to be ridiculous. And he's going to be mentioned as a potential first-round pick. I mean, he started the year in my top 50. He'd probably stay in my top 50. Just a matter of how high can he go. But he's a really interesting player who is still learning, still developing. But his role this year, whether it's inside, playing more on the interior, outside, playing on the edge, it's always been like a kind of a moving target. And so it's been interesting to see how they use him.
Well, and I'd love to tour the factory where Ohio State creates these 6'6", 255-pound fast edge rushers. It's pretty crazy. And it's not just the Bosa household, by the way.
No.
They always seem to have like Tyreek Smith looked the part. I think he was a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit heavier, but there's always some guy or two there where you walk into the practice and you go, oh my God, how does anybody ever block that guy? Yeah. And when they reach their potential, you get Chase Young.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And, Larry Johnson's a big part of that. One of the best assistant coaches, period, in college football. Yeah. I mean, that's a big selling point when, Ohio State's recruiting these guys. But I mean, Zach Harrison, he almost went to Penn State. Penn State's another one of those schools that, especially, whether it's Jason Oweh or, Micah Parsons, these freaks that they find, because, even though Zach Harrison's from Ohio, I think he was born in like Chicago. So he doesn't really have those Ohio State ties, even though he did decide to stay closer to home. But yeah, it's Ohio State, Penn State, those two schools especially. Throw Michigan in there. You look at Kwity Paye and Ajabo and Hutchinson. I mean, they have a good track record of producing impact guys on the defensive line.
Well, if Harrison keeps developing like this, I'll be curious to see where he winds up, because he will, like you said, put up great numbers.
Right. Yes.
In the pre-draft process, in the Underwear Olympics.
And it'll be key for a guy like that not to count it twice. The reason he's rated so high now is because we know he's a freak. So when he goes out and shows it at the combine, let's not bump him up even more, because he's already getting that bump. So, it's for him, it's more of finishing the season and getting better each game. And he's done that with against Rutgers, against Iowa. But can he do it against Penn State? Penn State has one of the best left tackles in the country, Olu Fashanu, who one of the biggest risers this year, could be the first or second or third offensive lineman drafted if he comes out, only a redshirt sophomore. He's just 19 years old. He's a young player, but the talent is there. So hopefully we get a few of those Zach Harrison versus Fashanu matchups.
Let's shift gears and talk about the guys that are in the NFL now. I guess we probably can't start without talking about Breece Hall, who was one of the most exciting rookies this year. Torn ACL, he's out for the season. But I mean, it's crazy because I remember when I was a kid, if you tore your ACL, it meant your career's probably over. Breece Hall could still have a very good career. It just, you gotta, we'll just have to wait till next year.
That's the thing is each knee responds differently. Every body's. I mean, look at J.K. Dobbins. He's had a really tough time, and I know it wasn't. There was a lot of things going on. With his injury. So we have to take each injury on an individual basis and go from there. But yeah, we certainly hope the best. Now, on the flip side, Breece Hall. He was my number 2 running back in the draft. My number 1 running back is starting to take off over in Seattle, Kenneth Walker, just like he did at Michigan State, transferring over from Wake Forest. He took off last year for the Spartans. And not to take anything away from, Thorne at quarterback or, a couple of talented receivers, but Kenneth Walker was that. I think
you could take away. We've seen them play this year. So
that's fair. Exactly. He was that offense. He was a ton of fun to watch. And then, I didn't see him running he's fast. He ran a 4.38 the combine. And so Kenneth Walker was, to me, the top running back in last year's class. And so far he's starting to play like it. It's a lot of these chunk, big play, explosive plays that we saw at Michigan State. It's starting to translate against NFL defenses. And that's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. And it was one of those that he sort of burst on the scene. It just didn't quite work for him at Wake Forest.
Yeah.
He gets to Michigan State. He's perfect for that offense. He's dominant in the Big Ten. And you're right. It seems to have carried over to the NFL. And I can't wait to see what he winds up being. Now, there's another rookie who is the topic of a lot of debate. Already was the topic of a lot of debate in New England, but especially after Monday Night Football. And it was weird. For about 20 minutes, he was the king of the world, and that's when he was singing along with Stacy.
Well, the old adage is if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one. They may just have 2 quarterbacks, and the numbers are what they are.
You saw the game. He's literally sitting on the bench, singing along to Stacy's mom. He's just led the Patriots to a second consecutive touchdown. It looks like, okay, they've weathered the storm from the Bears. They're going to, Bailey Zappe has replaced Mac Jones, and everything's going to be fine. Yeah, it wasn't fine. The Bears wind up blowing them out, and New England's offense was pretty stagnant in the second half. That quarterback situation's weird because it feels like Zappe gives them more than Jones does, but Jones was a first-round pick. And I'm curious, from your standpoint, how much does draft value play into decisions like this? It feels like someone like Bill Belichick isn't going to overrate draft value at the expense of winning games, but it's still hard because you used a first-round pick on this guy.
Bill Belichick does not care at all. Not even like 1%. Nobody moves on quicker from draft picks than Bill Belichick. He does. Once you're in camp, it doesn't matter if you're a 2nd rounder or a 7th rounder. He is it just who's going to give us the best chance to win. And I really believe that with Belichick. He does not care about your resume, and it's just what can you do to help the team. And so it will be interesting. Mac Jones, he's not 100%. I think that was pretty clear. That's not necessarily an excuse, but it's something that how do they manage this going forward with 2 good quarterbacks, but I don't think either are great. I don't think either are, to the level of, where you don't have questions about. With Bailey Zappe, again, my comp for him was Case Keenum. Now, Case Keenum's been in the league for over a decade. He, was a big, he almost led the Vikings to the Super Bowl that year. He can win games in the NFL, but he's got a ceiling. And Mac Jones, I think, has kind of a similar ceiling, but his ceiling might be just a little bit bigger. So it just comes down to who Bill Belichick and the coaching staff feels the most comfortable is going to win them games. And it might be something where we see them flip-flop the rest of the year just as they try to figure it out. I mean, hearing some of the comments by the players, the Patriots players, they still feel like it's Mac Jones's team, based off of what he did last year, coming into the year. So, those players just want to win too, but it's something that, it's not just, okay, retracting my previous statement about not, you're just going to throw out there who's going to give you the best chance to win. The culture of the locker room and all that matters too. And so it will be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah. And so it feels like around the league, this was going to be a year where a lot of people were going to take quarterbacks pretty early anyway, but it feels even more now like there are going to be a lot of quarterback needy franchises. Like, I don't know what we were thinking the Bucs would be from a draft standpoint going into this season, but It sure feels like right now they're going to be drafting a quarterback, because I don't know if we see Tom Brady again after this year.
Yeah, that's obviously something that it's hard to guess right now. This is the same regime that drafted Kyle Trask in the second round. Kyle Trask to me is a career backup. Maybe a spot starter. I certainly didn't see a guy that is going to lead you to the promised land, but we haven't seen enough of Kyle Trask to really know if he's developed. So that's something that obviously the Bucs know better than anybody else. But yeah, there's plenty of teams, and it starts at the top, obviously, with Detroit right now. They've got the number one pick. Detroit is a team that should have more than one win. Based off of how they've played, they just haven't been able to get it done. But they're going to be in that conversation to draft a quarterback. Houston's right there, 1-4-1. They're going to be in the conversation to draft a quarterback early. Carolina somehow beat the Bucs, so they kind of hurt themselves in terms of draft order. But I still think this team is going to lose way more games than they win down the stretch.
There will be quarterbacks when they pick at like 4 or 6.
Right. Exactly. And right now, with the way Cleveland's been playing, remember, Houston's got Cleveland's pick. And so right now, Houston's got the number 2 pick and the number 5 pick. And that's a really interesting part of this. So, that's 3 teams right there in the top 3, 4, 5 picks that could potentially go quarterback. And it's, this quarterback class is not going to be, I don't think it's going to be like 2 years ago when we had Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Fields, Mac Jones, where it just felt like quarterbacks were going to go, 1, 2, 3. And I don't think it's going to be like this, because I don't think these quarterbacks are, I like CJ Stroud, I like Bryce Young, I like Will Levis, but it's not, they don't have a universal approval rating from NFL teams and NFL scouts out there. It's not like these guys can't miss. And, it's like you mentioned earlier, they don't have the super high ceilings, but there's a lot to like about them where you at least like their floor.
It also feels like a lot of the guys we thought might rise up and have great seasons or build on, promise that they showed at the end of last year, that hasn't happened. It didn't happen with Tyler Van Dyke at Miami. I don't know. With Phil Yurkovich at Boston College, he looked the part for a while, but he's gotten hurt a bunch of times, and it just never seems to have really come together for him. And you wonder who that person is. I just don't know. Hendon Hooker probably is the one.
Hendon Hooker.
We weren't talking about that we are talking about now.
The only other guy, and we'll shelve Anthony Richardson for this discussion.
Yes,
he's a guy, right? We're both on board with that. The one guy that I think we should maybe talk a little bit more about, who's got ability and teams like, is Tanner McKee at Stanford. Stanford's obviously got a good track record of
2 wins in a
producing. Row. Yeah, exactly. So I don't like his mobility. That's the biggest hang up I have with him. He looks to me like a better version of like Mike Glennon. Mike Glennon played in the league for a lot of years, but and Davis Mills, he was the one guy that I thought maybe could, between him, Trask, and Kellen Mond, Davis Mills I thought was easily the best of that group, and I think he has been, but still hasn't secured a starting job in the NFL. He's not going to make the Texans bypass any of these quarterbacks that they really love quarterback early. But with Tanner McKee, I mean, he's a really accurate quarterback. Obviously coming from Stanford, he's smart. There's things about, and he's playing on an offense that there's not a ton around him in terms of help, in terms of making that an explosive unit. So Tanner McKee's the one, maybe he's in that Hendon Hooker tier where guys that you could see a team falling in love with them, and not to the point where you're taking them, I think, top 10, but maybe they could sneak into the first round. I think that's at least not an impossible part of this process as we go forward. And McKee will have to declare. He is technically an underclassman. He's older. He'll be 23 in the spring, I believe. He was a 2-year mission guy. So that's something that could factor into his decision as well, even because he is technically a third year sophomore, but he is older for his experience.
Yeah, it is. It will be interesting to see how these teams react, because like the Colts just benched Matt Ryan. Sam Ehlinger is the starter the rest of the season. I don't know that Sam Ehlinger is the long-term solution. I guess we'll have to give him a chance. We'll see if Texas is back, but I'm just not sure that's going to happen. I like Sam. I hope it does happen for him. And
sure, yeah,
that mobility should help a little bit, but I don't know. We'll see. But the Colts may be in the mix for a quarterback, and there may be more quarterback needy teams than there are quarterbacks that you feel comfortable could potentially be NFL starters. You have a story coming out on Draft Outliers, and some really interesting numbers on Bryce Young, which you asked me a question before the show. I got the answer wrong. Now I'm curious to see. Let's ask it again and see if the audience can get this right.
Okay, so this is the article I've got coming out later this week on Draft Outliers. For whatever reason, they fall out. Whether it's size, it could be age. Hendon Hooker's in there. It could be a lot of different factors, where they played, the lower level of competition, whatever. So something makes him an outlier. And for Bryce Young, obviously, it's going to be the size. And when he measures at the combine, he's probably going to be closer. I mean, he's listed at 5'11", probably going to be under that. Definitely going to be under 6 foot. He's listed at 194 pounds. I'll be very surprised if he goes over 200 pounds. So he's going to be under 6 foot and under 200 pounds. The last 25 years, so the last quarter century, 301 quarterbacks have been drafted. Only 2 of those failed to reach 6 feet and failed to reach 200 pounds. Neither were drafted in the first 3 rounds. So that probably makes it harder to guess.
Yeah, I guessed Kyler initially. You didn't tell me the first 3 rounds part, but Kyler, you said, was 207 when he got drafted. And Kyler is thicker. Like Baker Mayfield is thicker. Of the smaller, in stature,
Drew Brees.
Russell Wilson is thick. So I'm struggling to come up with who this might be, because and it goes back 25 years. It's not Doug Flutie. Also, Doug Flutie, I think, went to the USFL out of college.
And there were a few that maybe had one but not the other, like Pat White, coming out of West Virginia. He was 197 pounds, but he was over 6 foot. So he did not qualify for that. So there are a few that, Kyler Murray, Johnny Manziel, he was under 6 foot, but he was 207 when he came out. So there was a few.
Lower body. All right.
I know these two. I know these 2 guys. You've heard their names. You watched them play. One is more like, he actually had a decent NFL career in terms of, I mean, he was a backup, but he played for 8, 9, 10 years. The other guy was more a flash in the pan, and but I know you've heard of both of them. One was drafted in 2003. The other was drafted in 2000. So we have to go back a little bit.
That's Chase Daniels out. That's but he's still in the league, and I'm guessing he was over 200. 2000 and 2003. Ooh, good. Can I get a conference for either of them?
So the one that is the more well-known, he's a 4th round pick in 2003. He played in the Big 12. The other one, I believe, was ACC. Yeah, ACC. He was drafted in 2000, 7th rounder.
let's see, played in the Big 12. It wasn't one of the Texas Tech guys. It wouldn't have been like BJ Simons or anybody like that. Trying to think of who came out of Oklahoma at that time, but it wasn't. I don't think it was anybody there. Was it? No. I give up. I give up. I can't do it.
Yeah, no, it's Seneca Wallace.
Seneca Wallace. Wow.
Iowa State, who, he had a decent career, played for the Seahawks for all those years. And so he's 5'11" and 3/8, 196 pounds at the combine that year in 2003. So he's one. And then the other, Joe Hamilton, coming out of Georgia Tech.
Oh, okay. Joe Hamilton makes a lot of sense because Joe Hamilton was a fabulous college football player. But
exactly.
Obviously, you didn't know if any of it would translate in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think he had a decent arena career maybe, or CFL, I can't remember. But he was a 7th rounder in 2000, 5'10" and a quarter, 192 pounds when he came out. So, I went through every single combine sheet dating back to 96, 97. So the last 25 years, and those are the only 2 that I found. It was, it's not a long list, obviously. And so, again, the point of this article is to look at, because look, you look around the NFL. The NFL is full of outliers. I mean, think about Cooper Kupp.
Donald.
He ran a 4.62 in the 40-yard dash coming from an FCS school. Yeah, Aaron Donald. He was 6 foot and 3/4 inches, 285 pounds. I mean, just doesn't fit the profile that you look for. Josh Allen coming from Wyoming, how inaccurate he was. His completion percentage at Wyoming his final year was like 55%, and his numbers against the better competition, Oregon, Nebraska, Iowa was terrible.
Horrible. Iowa,
right. So it's these guys all qualify as out. I mean, even throw in Patrick Mahomes. Texas Tech had never produced. They produced numbers from their quarterbacks on Saturdays, but none of those guys had proven to be anything on Sundays. So, you look around the NFL, it's full of outliers, guys that are exceptions to the rule. Now, that's not to say that you should just, betting on exceptions to the rules is just a fail-safe strategy here. But I think that, you can look around at some of these outliers and say, do they have other qualities that can make them overcome whatever their outlier is? And to me, Bryce Young, he has that. Even though he's going to come in very, very small, he had, you focus on the position-specific things that you want at quarterback, accuracy, touch, he's got it. Mental processing, intelligence, vision, definitely has it. Toughness, intangibles, he's got it. Now, does he have to do a better job taking care of himself in terms of not taking those hits and still improvising and still working his magic, but not taking as much contact? Absolutely. He needs to do a better job of that. But there's a lot of things that say Bryce Young can overcome that and be the outlier. So there's a lot of interesting players like that in this article. Peter Skoronski, he's another one. Northwestern left tackle who should be one of the first offensive linemen drafted, maybe the first. And this was interesting because we just went through this, with Rashawn Slater 2 years ago, because Rashawn Slater came in at exactly 33-inch arms. And for a lot of teams, 33, that's the absolute bottom. That we won't go below 33. And so you just have to hit that 33 mark. Peter Skoronski's not going to hit 33 inches in terms of length. He might not hit 32 and a half. So can he be the outlier? Because you can look around the NFL, there's not many. I mean, we've had a few guys, like Joe Staley was, I think, 33, just over 33. Zach Martin was under 33. He was 32 and 7/8, and they moved him to guard. I think Zach Martin can still play tackle, but there's not a lot of teams that are willing to invest in shorter armed players. And honestly, watching Skoronski over the summer, I was on board with saying he's a guard, because there were times where the length, you could see it. It just wasn't, it was an issue holding him back. But watching him this year, he's so much more controlled, so much quicker with everything. Part of it is how smart he is. He understands what his limitations are, and he understands what he needs to do to combat that. But it's something that will always follow him, that lack of length. And so Skoronski's in here. Devon Achane from A&M, only being 185 pounds. Can he be the CJ Spiller, the Chris Johnson, guys that were under 200 pounds but were still high draft picks? Can he be in that conversation because his speed is so special. So a lot of interesting test cases in this article.
It is going to be really interesting. And Achane's a really good one because he's in a non-functional offense right now. Like,
yeah,
but
he's still being productive.
Right. He's so much better than what he should be, because Achane is elite track speed, but not a quote unquote track guy. Like, he has great football instincts, happy to run the ball in between the tackles, great field vision. That's why he's such a good return man. I hope the right team gets him, because I think they'll be able to do some stuff with him, and he deserves it after just getting pounded this year, because he is really Texas A&M's only playmaking option at the moment. And so he's getting hit pretty hard right now.
Running track for A&M in the spring, he ran a 10.14 100 meters. And to put that number in perspective for people that don't understand how fast that is, to qualify for the 2016 Olympics, you had to run a 10.16, and he ran a 10.14. So this guy has just world-class speed. And we've talked about him before on this pod, how there were questions about, okay, Isaiah Spiller's now in the NFL. How would he handle more of a full-time role? He has not looked like he's slowed down. He's taken the hits. He's been, their feature back, and he has not slowed down at all. So, I mean, Achane has done exactly what scouts have wanted to see in terms of taking on this new role and proving he could be, he's not a bell cow. He's not going to carry the ball 30 times a game, but give him 20 catches or 20 touches throughout the course of a game, and he'll be just fine.
Yeah, it's
a similar running back in that kind of the size is over at Kansas State with Deuce Vaughn. He's listed at 5'6", 176 pounds. I mean, Deuce Vaughn is a lot of fun to watch, but what do you do with that in terms of the size? It's really tough.
Well, there was a little guy at Kansas State years ago.
You're right.
Really great in the NFL, Darren Sproles. So there's certainly precedent for it. That brings me to the games we're excited to see this week, and that's one I want to see. I want to see Deuce Vaughn against Oklahoma State's defense, and Felix Anudike-Uzomah against Oklahoma State's offensive line, and can he get Spencer Sanders on the ground? And maybe this game will have a lot to say about who winds up playing for the Big 12 title, I think. So that'll be a fun one. You got Florida, Georgia, so you get to see some really good athletes on the field in that game. We'll see. This is where Anthony Richardson made his first start last year, and it went not good at all. Probably going to be something similar, and you're going to see some of those Georgia weapons if you want to take a look at Brock Bowers, who's still not draft eligible. Sorry, guys. But
I do want to see Brenton Cox in that game for Florida. Brenton Cox has been one of the – Florida's had an up and down year. Brenton Cox is so interesting because if he comes out last year, he might not get drafted because the reviews from the previous coaching staff were not glowing.
Too much freelancing. Too much. Yeah. I'm gonna go. Oh, I see the guy with the ball. I'm near him and I'm really fast and I'm gonna grab him. But my job was to set the edge.
Right. Exactly.
So that's but that has.
But he's playing a lot better this year.
Yeah.
And that's a new coaching staff's probably exactly what he needed just to get a fresh start. And he's playing a lot better. But Georgia's got some really good offensive linemen. Broderick Jones, left tackle, is a really good player. So how does Brenton Cox do? Because that's really, if Florida's going to have any chance of winning this game, they've got to get pressure on the quarterback and really force Georgia to be third and long. And I'm not sure they'll be able to do it. But if they can, it's going to be with guys like Brenton Cox getting pressure on the quarterback.
Well, and Florida's also got Gervon Dexter, who, from a measurable standpoint, is everything you want, and he'll be playing in some very good interior defensive linemen. I feel like he's done all right this year. Last year it felt like he would kind of disappear frustration. It might have been fatigue because they had to play him so much. They couldn't really rotate him. Feels like they've been able to rotate him a little more this year. So when he's on the field, it feels a little more impactful. But the one thing we got to see from him is just he is often the last guy to move off the defensive line, and it's so frustrating. And it's to your point. I think part of it is fatigue, and because he is, in terms of explosion, that first step, he's probably got the best on that defensive line.
but his snap anticipation is not on the same level. So oftentimes, watching the tape, that Florida defensive line, all 3 guys are moving, and Dexter's still not out of his stance yet. And so that's where I want to see him improve throughout the rest of this season. He needs to get better because the talent is just off the charts, but just needs to get better with some of the details of the position.
Well, he will be challenged very much this week by Cedric Van Pran Granger and Tate Ratledge and that group. So excited to see that. Excited to see Ohio State and Penn State. Some very good players on the field. We mentioned Zach Harrison. This will be if he has a big week, I don't know that it's much of a problem for Ohio State. But I will say Penn State always seems to play them tough, and especially in Happy Valley. So that might wind up being the best game of the week.
And I can't wait to see Joey Porter Jr., the really long corner going up against some of these receivers, especially Marvin Harrison Jr. Just to see, I mean, Joey Porter Jr. is 6'2", 200 pounds. He's got really long arms. Just to see how he can match up with some of these guys. And I don't know if we're probably not going to see Jackson Smith and Jigba after tried to give it a go against Iowa, then he had to get off, leave the field. It's just that nagging hamstring is just really giving him a lot of trouble. And it's just one of those things you wonder if it's better for him to shut it down until he knows for a fact that he's 100%. But I mean, regardless, we know Ohio State has the receivers. And this will be, another good test for CJ Stroud. I mean, Ohio State's been playing a lot at home this year. Tough place to play on the road, a defense that, is got holes, but they're really talented. And, for CJ Stroud, it's just a matter of, okay, let's see what you can do. If you can do what you did against Rutgers, what you did against Iowa, now do that against some better talent. That's something that scouts want to see from him. Yeah.
And the thing is, if you can do that against Iowa, there's a good chance you can do it against just about anybody, because Iowa, very well coached defense, maybe not the most perfect athletic specimens, but they are always where they are supposed to be. And so, it'd be interesting when going up against some guys that will be in the NFL. Joey Porter Jr., it's so strange seeing him because, you think of his dad was this big, long linebacker, and now he produced this big, long corner, but it's not, you hear Joey Porter and you're like, wait, he's supposed to be a little bit bigger than that. But wait, he's very big for his position.
Yeah. I mean, because Joey Porter was so just thick and broad. And he was, kind of like a tweener defensive
he was a
linebacker where,
Steelers outside linebacker. Like him, Von Kirkland, those guys.
Right.
So,
and Joey Porter Jr. is more lanky and long. And so, it's a really interesting, but just think about the NFL bloodlines when he's going up against Marvin Harrison Jr., and that's just a lot of fun.
Oh, it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be so much fun to watch this weekend. Dane, I cannot wait to get together with you next week and talk about everything we've seen. I'll give you another eyewitness account of Will Levis, and I'll give you one of Hendon Hooker and Jalin Hyatt, and maybe Cedric Tillman too. We'll see.
I can't wait. It's going to be a big one for both these quarterbacks to continue that momentum. And, there's money on the line for these guys. So I'll be eager to hear your firsthand account, maybe bump into a few scouts, see what they see as well. And so it'll be a lot to talk about next week.
Oh yeah. NFL money and NIL money on the line right now.
Yeah.
Let's get it done.
You ain't lying.